Hello, tired listener. Are you there? Lying in the dark, thinking that being rich is the answer, that if you'd just been born at the top, surrounded by gold, castles and expensive rugs, everything would be easier, that the Middle Ages would have been tolerable, as long as it came with a title and a half-decent crown. But what if I told you that being rich back then was just a more elaborate way to be cold, eat poorly and die young? Tonight, we're diving into the world of those born at the top of the social pyramid, only to discover that the top, back then, was freezing, damp, and smelled like a wet horse. Nothing comfortable, just stone, obligation, and expired incense. Before we start this journey, wrapped in mildew and heavy veils, adjust your pillow. Find that comfortable spot, and prepare to discover how medieval nobility was really just suffering, but with a coat of arms embroidered on its chest. Oh, and while sleep is still avoiding you, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel. There's always a new story, equally devoid of glamour, waiting for you. Another night of useless information wrapped in historical boredom. And let me know in the comments where you are right now, and what time sleep decided to abandon you. It's always good to know there are other people turning over with me. Now, turn off the light, close your eyes, and come with me to live the nightmare of being rich in the worst possible century. You thought being rich in the Middle Ages meant living with carpets, wine, and silk cushions. Spoiler, it had all of those, but it was still an elegant torture. You live in a castle. It's too enormous to ever feel welcoming. Thick stone walls, tapestries that just make your neck itch and don't provide any warmth. Heavy curtains hanging from the ceiling just to try to contain the icy wind, which insists on freezing you despite all the luxury. It's a free experience with hypothermia, even in the middle of summer. Your bed, yes, it has straw, but that's just the base, a paillasse as they called it. If you have status, the mattress is stuffed with wool, feathers, or even goose down. The frame is wood, sometimes adorned, but even the most ornate of royal beds only improves the look, not the aroma, which still carries moths, mites, and tufts of feathers scattered like historical trophies. The bed was pre-warmed with a pan of coals slid into an iron container, a noble habit, so you don't freeze your feet before even falling asleep. The problem is the smell of charcoal baked into the sheets, which makes you sneeze 3 times before closing your eyes. And no, the servants don't share the bed. They sleep huddled on straw pallets in the corner of the room, but even that doesn't stop the nightly visit from an overly confident rat, which insists on brushing against your knee as if it's claiming the territory. Waking up is a ritual. A servant creaks open the windows, letting in air that carries the smell of wet horse and nearby stable manure. You glimpse your face in the blurry reflection of an unpolished basin that serves as a mirror. Seriously, this is luxury. Who knows the last time anyone cleaned that object? In the hall, they dress you in layers of fabric, silk, coarse wool, leather, decorative helmets, and brooches that pinch your skin. You look like a walking Renaissance painting, but you just feel the heat of your own reputation. And the food? Yes, you have banquets. They happen on special occasions. Weddings, a visit from the king, a saint's birthday. Whole birds, salted fish, pies with exotic fillings and imported spices like pepper and cinnamon. Sweet desserts of honey, dried fruits, and even trable, candies scented with saffron, and even ambergris from the east. But there are problems. The meat is sometimes slightly rotten. The strong seasoning serves to deceive your sense of smell. You're part of the nobility, but you eat with your hands or use a thin knife you carry at your waist. The fork? Not a chance. That utensil was still scandalous and associated with the devil in much of medieval Christendom. You sit at the banquet, surrounded by swords, sculptures, and visions of decadence. The priest speaks of humility next to a feast that shines brighter than a church's stained glass. Wine flows into silver goblets, but one wrong sip could poison you. Yes, many nobles were poisoned due to ambition, or by eating grapes that came in boxes shared with infected peasants. Then comes the audible entertainment, failing lutes, off-key horns, and dancers locked in choreography that looks more like a war of poses. Your feet hurt, the clothes are literally heavy. Etiquette demands you stand, smile little, speak in a calm voice, and never touch the dirty utensils with your hands. When night falls, you return to the room. The bed, even adorned with a canopy and linen curtains, still leaves you frozen and bored. The linen sheets don't cool. The feathers survived the summer, and the extra layer of blankets half asphyxiates you, purely for the sake of aesthetics. You move slowly, smudge the sheet with lamp grease, hear a strange noise in the ceiling. Moths, rats, an echo. And you think, being rich has its limits. You close your eyes and realize that even wrapped in silk, medieval wealth was just a more expensive way to suffer. The cold is still there, persistent. The fireplace went out hours ago, and you feel the icy air seeping in through the gaps in the heavy windows. Windows that, by the way, don't even have glass. They're holes covered with thick fabric or wood. You think about calling someone to relight the fire, but you remember your servant is still wrapped in an old cloth, lying near the door, snoring as if he'd been beaten with a lute. You don't have the heart to wake him, but you also can't get back to sleep. So you lie there motionless, trying to find one spot on the bed that is minimally warm, a part of the mattress that still holds your body heat. Nothing. It feels like someone replaced your bed with a stone bench. The wool cape itches. The feathers in the mattress shift as if they're alive. One is stubbornly poking your left shoulder blade. You try to adjust, but every time you turn, the wood frame creaks, making a sound that echoes in the empty room. And you remember you're in an enormous castle with enough echo to repeat your own thoughts. Outside, the chapel bell rings. It's still early, but that means someone is already praying. The day has begun, and now there's no turning back. You sit up in bed, struggling against the layers of blankets, the heavy night clothes, and the moral weight of being born noble in a century without central heating. Your servant wakes with a jolt, comes running with the basin of water. The water is warm. If you consider warm an exaggerated compliment, you wash your face. The towel is linen fine, but that doesn't stop it from feeling like wet sandpaper. You rub your face as if trying to violently scrub the sleep away. Then come the clothes, the official outfit of the day. 3 people help you put it on. A long tunic underneath, another tighter one. Over that, a cape embroidered with crests you don't even remember the meaning of. Buttons, buckles, leather belts, sleeves that make no practical sense. The metal necklace is heavy, the brooch scratches your neck. Appearance is everything, comfort is optional, and has been denied. You pull on hard boots, tied with straps that take forever. Your toes are still numb, but now they're also compressed. Walking on the cold stone of the castle becomes a spiritual experience. Each step echoes, and the floor seems to want to suck you back to bed. But you keep going, because the breakfast hall awaits you. On the way, you pass enormous tapestries with religious and heraldic scenes, all dusty. No one dares clean them. It's heritage, it's art, it's mites. Arriving at the hall, you find a set table. Dark, hard bread, cheese cured beyond recognition. A broth they call soup, but looks like water someone heated bones in. A little cold meat cut the night before. And wine. Because water might be contaminated, but wine is always the solution. Even at 7 in the morning, you chew slowly. Everything is chewable, but nothing is pleasant. And the fork? No, still not. You use a knife, the one hanging from your waist that serves to cut bread and scratch your leg, depending on the occasion. Your other hand holds the bread, which becomes a plate. Sometimes it absorbs the sauce, sometimes it just absorbs your patience, and nobody says anything. Eating is a silent act. Nobles don't talk in the morning. The only sounds are discreet chewing, sniffles, and the occasional dry throat clearing. Etiquette demands you don't look around too much, don't lick your fingers, and for all that is holy, don't drop anything in your lap. You finish, stand up, and now The day truly begins. There's no schedule, but there are floating obligations. Visit the steward, supervise the stables, listen to two monks argue about the distribution of salt. You try to be interested, but your body is heavy, the clothes itch, and this morning's cheese is still fighting with your intestines. As you walk the corridors, you find servants bowing, not out of genuine respect, but because protocol demands it. One of them has a swollen eye, another has a bandaged leg. None of them look rested, and you feel for a moment that perhaps luxury only serves to mask the collective exhaustion. You stop at a high balcony and look out at the courtyard. It's raining lightly, and the wind rushes in, bringing the smell of earth, horse, and smoke. It's autumn, the favorite season of poets and rats. You take a deep breath, or at least you try, because the embroidered wool collar is squeezing your neck again. You keep walking. Each step is a reminder that the boots were made more to show status than to walk in. They pinch your heel, bend wrong at the ankle, and produce a peculiar sound, like wood scratching leather, if that makes any sense. It doesn't, but you hear it with every step. In the smaller hall, where political decisions are theoretically discussed, you are received with reverence, a little fear, and a hint of boredom. 3 men are waiting: the counselor, the priest, and the administrator. They all speak slowly as if time doesn't matter, and they all expect you to say something intelligent, which is difficult, considering your stomach is still processing this morning's cheese. You nod your head. You pretend to understand what was said about the wheat taxes, the crop irrigation, and the problem with the neighbor's mule. Then you give a "very well, see to it," generic enough to end the conversation without seeming indifferent, even though that's exactly what you are. You go back to the corridor and realize there's a ceremony scheduled. A baptism, a wedding, a visit from another noble. It doesn't matter. There will be special clothes, there will be posture, there will be presence. And you, of course, will need to be there, smiling as if you are happy, inside and out. The chambermaid finds you in the hall. She says nothing, just hands you a new tunic. Thicker, more embroidered, more uncomfortable. You change right there, with 2 pages helping you shove your arms through sleeves that could, by themselves, clothe 3 people. The fabric scratches. The embroidery pulls a hair on your arm. The silver brooch gets caught in your hair. You take a deep breath, or try. The leather belt, pressed against your stomach, responds before your lungs do. Time to go out. The castle entrance is full of visitors. More nobles, more layers of wool, more exaggerated perfumes that only mask the smell of ancestral sweat that inhabits every tunic. Everyone greets each other with that solemn air of someone who doesn't even trust their own reflection. You smile, a trained, almost automatic smile. As the ceremony proceeds, you sit in the highest chair. It looks comfortable, doesn't it? The seat is hard, and the chair back presses exactly on the vertebra that hurts the most. The ceremony drags on. The priest speaks. The other noble speaks. Someone sings. Someone cries. You pretend to be paying attention, but your mind has already left for anywhere that has silence and comfortable shoes. Then comes the toast. You raise the silver goblet. The wine is strong, dry, made from grapes that were probably already fermenting when the previous king was still breathing. You drink, because it's part of it, because everyone is watching, because refusing would be offensive, and also because at this moment you need something to distract from the general discomfort of being you. The banquet that follows is impressive. A huge table full of colorful dishes, piled meats, exotic fruits, and a pie shaped like a smiling boar. You sit and prepare your hands, because the fork, you already know, isn't here yet. The knife you carry at your waist now takes center stage. You cut the meat with dexterity, try to keep your fingers clean, but the sauce drips anyway. The napkin beside you is decorative. Using it is a lack of etiquette, so you wipe discreetly on the inside of your tunic. The part no one sees, the part that at the end of the day will be filthy. While you eat, you observe the other nobles. Some talk quietly. Others just chew and nod. One is clearly drunk, but fakes lucidity with a dignity that is almost poetic. Another looks ready to fall face first into his plate. You don't judge, you understand. After a while, they serve dessert, dried fruits with honey. Delicate, expensive, hard to chew with the teeth you have, which, even for a noble, are far from perfect. No one had toothbrushes back then. The most you do is rinse with wine and wipe with a cloth every now and then. The party ends, but not your role. You have to say goodbye, walk through the whole hall, greet everyone, exchange cordial words with names you don't remember, all while smiling, all while maintaining posture, all while your body screams for a bed, a bath, and silence. You return to your room. There's still light. The fire has been lit, hot water is in a bucket, but the exhaustion is so great that you just take off part of the clothes, release the belt with almost spiritual relief, and collapse onto the mattress. It's still irregular. A feather pokes your side. You sigh. The day is over, but the discomfort continues. And tomorrow there's more. The night deepens. The fireplace slowly dies down. You wake up to the sound of the wind pushing against the window boards. The sound of the cold entering the room is almost poetic. If poetry included creaking wood, flapping cloth, and a faint groan from the castle trying not to collapse, you try to cover yourself more. The blankets are many, layers of linen, wool, and feathers, but none can stop that treacherous draught that finds a gap in the canopy, circles under the bed, and shoots straight up your spine. And then the itching starts. Behind your ear, on your neck, on your chest. You scratch with contained desperation, trying to believe it's just an allergy. But you know it's not. It isn't. Because an itch in the Middle Ages was almost never just an itch. It's lice, or fleas, or noble scabies. After all, no matter how rich you are, bathing is an event. A rare, laborious ritual, full of logistics. It involves heating water, carrying buckets, filling the tub. That oval wooden tub that looks more like a wine barrel for uncomfortable humans. All this just for you to sit naked in a lukewarm broth, being watched by two servants, trying not to think about how many bodies have already used this same tub. The weekly bath, when it happens, is almost a celebration. But between one bath and the next, you just change your undergarments, if you're lucky, and rub your body with a coarse cloth soaked in vinegar or perfumed oil, because that apparently helps keep the bad odors away, or at least disguises them poorly. The problem is that your clothes, made of wool, linen, or even silk, aren't washed every week, sometimes not even every month. Washing fabric is expensive, time-consuming, and risky. It could ruin the embroidery. So the medieval solution is perfume. Lots of perfume. Lavender, rosemary, camphor. You become a person who stinks of flowers, but you still stink. Back to the itching. You get out of bed with a slow movement, afraid to see if there are marks, but you can already feel the irritated skin. Your servant wakes up too. He watches you. You don't say anything, but he already understands. He gets a fine-toothed comb made of bone or wood. He begins to pass it through your hair with the delicacy of someone who has done this many times. You stand there motionless like a living sculpture. The comb drags slowly. Every so often he stops, cleans something on a cloth, and continues. You pretend not to notice, because you are noble, and nobles don't have lice. They just have intense sensory experiences on the scalp. After the comb comes the ointment, a mixture of animal fat, ashes, herbs, and some oil that smells like an old church. He rubs it on your scalp. It burns. You wince, but you endure it, because protocol demands it. You change clothes, a new shirt, a less embroidered tunic, shoes with a different clasp. All this to start another day of obligations and appearances. The servant collects the used clothes and hangs them to air out, because washing, as you know, is not a priority. In the hallway, you pass other figures of your station, all wearing layers and layers of fabric, all walking with affected elegance, all discreetly scratching some part of their body. The look says, "Good morning." The subtle gesture says, "I'm itching too." Lee. Arriving at the hall, you discover that today is a visit from the clergy. A bishop, perhaps an abbot, someone with more spiritual authority than you, and with the same dermatological problem. You need to be clean, or appear clean. So the incense session begins. You sit in a wooden chair while two servants burn herbs around you. The smoke rises, fills the room, gets in your nose, makes your eyes water. But supposedly, it purifies. According to the monk in charge, your soul is now lighter. Your nose, however, is just blocked. The visitor arrives, a fat man dressed in black with a heavy crucifix on his chest and an expression of eternal boredom. He greets you with rehearsed words. You respond with reverence. They talk about the scriptures, the monastery's lands, and the barley harvest. But inside, both are thinking the same thing. When will this be over? The cleric proposes a prayer. Everyone kneels. The carpet is rough. Your knee hurts. You feign fervor. The prayer lasts 5 minutes, but it feels like an eternity that smells of mildew and scraped knees. The visit over, the bishop leaves with a bag of coins, a donation, of course, part of the game. And you're left there, breathing deeply, trying to remember why exactly being rich was supposed to be good. You go back to your room. Light enters through the window. You look at yourself in the polished bronze mirror. The reflection is distorted. You look tired. You are tired. And it's only 9 in the morning. The servant enters, says your mother has sent for you. She wants to talk about the possible union between your family and the relatives of the Duke of the North. An alliance, a marriage, an opportunity. You close your eyes for a second, breathe, feel the itch returning, and think, another glorious day in the life of nobility. And since you're still awake at this point, you're probably enjoying this story. So before sleep arrives for good, take the chance to subscribe and like this video. You're just standing there in the hallway, watching a cow chew grass in the courtyard with more peace of mind than you've had in the last 3 days. And then the servant repeats, "Your mother sent for you." Those words land with the weight of a destiny drawn up, not by you, but by generations of aristocrats who thought marriage was synonymous with stability, or at the very least, a good business deal. You walk to her quarters. The castle is large, yes, but each step echoes more than the last. And the closer you get to her room, the more you smell the incense mixed with old roses. That specific aroma of aged nobility and maternal authority. She is sitting in a chair that looks like a minor throne, embroidering, always embroidering, a cloth that will never be used, a handkerchief that will never wipe a tear, just aesthetic occupation. She raises her eyes, looks at you, and begins. "We received a letter from the Duke of the North. His daughter is a beautiful girl, educated, and very fertile." You try not to react. You keep your face neutral, but your mind has already gone far away. Marriage, a word so loaded with obligations, silences, and awkward dinners that just hearing it makes your stomach turn. You don't even know this girl, she doesn't know you, but that has never mattered. The marriage isn't about you, it's about land, money, power, your body as a bridge. Your boredom as a diplomatic tool. Congratulations. You are feudal Tinder, only without the ability to swipe left and with zero choice. Your mother keeps talking. She lists the family crest, the properties, the number of servants, all with a practical, cold, almost accounting-like excitement. She talks of heirs, of lineage, of honor, all very beautiful. She just forgot to include you in this sentimental equation. After 20 minutes of hearing about the qualities of your future wife, you are dismissed, but your head is still heavy. You go to the castle chapel, not to pray, just to sit on the wooden bench and look at the ceiling. The smell of burnt wax and humidity is almost comforting. Almost. Outside, children are playing in the courtyard. Servants' children. running, shouting, kicking a dried pig's bladder as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. You envy their lightness. Not for the toy, of course, but for not having a marriage letter waiting for them in the hall. The afternoon continues. There's a hunt scheduled, of course. Nothing like killing a deer to forget your own problems. You put on the riding clothes, which itch less than the ceremonial tunic, but still itch. You grab the lance, mount the horse, and follow the other nobles into the forest. The hunt is loud, long, and absolutely unnecessary, but everyone pretends it's exciting. The sound of the dogs, the shouts of the knights, the snapping of branches. At some point someone yells, "They've seen a deer." Everyone runs. You do too. Out of instinct, out of protocol, out of not having anything better to do. You don't hit anything, but no one comments. One of the other nobles brings back a small, wounded animal. Everyone celebrates. You pretend you're happy and ride back to the castle with more mud on your boots than pride in your chest. Back in the hall, your mother is talking with the priest. They look at you. You pretend not to see them. You go up to your room, wash your hands in a basin that has seen cleaner water, and sit on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The servant enters, brings a jug of wine and a plate of dried fruit. You chew without enthusiasm. The wine burns your throat, but it calms you a little. Dinner arrives, smaller than the previous banquet, but still solemn. Candles lit, long table, rustic dishes. You sit down. The conversation revolves around the harvest, the plagues, a rumor about a witch in a nearby village. Everyone feigns interest. No one says anything meaningful. After dessert, some kind of sweet pie with more crust than filling. You're called for a talk with the steward. He brings maps, lines, land measurements. He shows you where a new barn will be built. He asks for your blessing. You say, "Very well," with the conviction of someone who just wants to go to sleep. And then the day ends. You return to the room. The fireplace is already out. The mattress is cold. The feathers are still attacking you. And as you lie down, the thought returns. Marrying someone you've never seen, having children out of obligation, continuing the cycle. You close your eyes and ask yourself, which part of this exactly was the advantage of being rich? Waking up early is a curse shared by the poor and the noble, but at least the peasant has the sun as an alarm clock. You don't. You have a servant with onion breath whispering that it's time to get up. He does it with trained delicacy, because he already knows. A sleepy noble is like a storm. Silent, slow, but devastating. You sit up in bed with difficulty. Your whole body is sore from yesterday's ride. Muscles you didn't even remember existed are now screaming. And the mattress, of course, contributed. Sleeping on matted feathers over wood isn't exactly therapeutic. You stretch, try an educated yawn, and feel the pop in your back. Maybe another divine sign that your status doesn't spare you from anything. The servant brings the same basin of water that has become your morning companion. The towel is still rough. The cloth smells of humidity, and the water reminds you that central heating is a concept from a very distant future. You splash your face, trying to wake up. But wake up for what? For the same eternal cycle of symbolic decisions and glorified discomforts. You get dressed. Another formal outfit. Today is a day for visits from other lords. Yes, again, because alliances aren't built with likes, but with dinners, promises, and conversations disguised as politeness. You need to look powerful, balanced, healthy, interested, even if your greatest desire is to roll back into the blankets and let the world solve its own feudal disputes. You go to the hall. The arrangement is impeccable. The floor has been swept, the tapestries shaken, the candles lit, the fruits arranged in baskets, and the table set with more ornaments than usable space. The guests arrive. Heavy clothes, forced smiles, overly long greetings. They all kiss, hug, and look at each other with that expression that mixes cordiality and espionage. Every word spoken has 3 hidden intentions. You know this. You do it too. It's the protocol of the elite. The conversation starts lukewarm. They talk of harvests, of troops, of rumors. You listen with one ear, the other is focused on the discomfort of your wool sock, which insists on slipping down to your heel. No one talks about what they're really thinking. To be noble is to be a master of omission. One of the guests compliments your cape. You thank him with the smile you practiced in the mirror, but you know he just wants to know if you're spending more than you should be. Another asks about your future bride. You answer with false enthusiasm. Everyone knows that marriages of convenience are the rule. Only the court poet still pretends that romance exists here. Soon, the meal is served. And as always, it's a visual work of art with questionable flavor. A thick broth with shredded meat, dark, hard bread, and a dish of roasted roots with spices. Everything looks elegant until you taste it. But as a good noble, you keep your face neutral, chew slowly, and thank the heavens, even knowing that God didn't cook any of it. During dinner, the court jester enters. Yes, you have a jester, a man paid to entertain the elite with jokes, juggling, and exaggerated expressions. Today he's doing a parody of the local bishop. Everyone laughs, even the bishop, though he knows the joke is about him. Because laughing is also part of the game, but his look promises penance. After the meal, more conversation, more disguised diplomacy, more compliments that mean nothing. You have a headache, but you can't show it. You clench your jaw, keep your neck straight, and listen to the problems with the neighbor's wall, as if it were of your direct interest. Finally, the guests leave. The room empties. The sound of voices disappears, giving way to the crackle of wood in the fireplace. You take a deep breath for the first time all day, but not for long. The administrator enters. He wants to discuss the vineyard taxes. You listen, nod, pretend to read the numbers on a stained parchment. Everything looks the same as last month, but you know if you say that out loud, it will sound like disinterest. So you suggest a slight change in the collection, enough to show authority, enough to get out of the conversation. On the way back to your room, you pass 2 pages arguing. One of them drops a bucket of water. You say nothing. You just watch the liquid spread across the cold stones and think that maybe there's more life in that spilled water than in your entire routine. You enter the room. The servant has already laid out the nightclothes. A light robe, a clean sheet, a lit candle. The room seems calm, but your body is exhausted from so much performing, from maintaining the pose, from keeping the lineage alive, strong, respected. You lie down. The bed is better made today. The feather is still sharp, but the cold is less. Maybe you'll sleep better, maybe not. It depends on the wine, the digestion, and the thoughts of the approaching marriage. Nobility gave you a stone roof, servants at your disposal, daily banquets. But it took away your peace, your silence, and your freedom. You close your eyes and dream of the cow in the courtyard. She was chewing slowly. She looked happy. The lamp flickers. The fire in the hearth no longer has the strength it had earlier. The room is dark, but you can still see the outline of the canopy curtains and hear the distant song of the night watchman bolting the gate. You try to stretch your body, but your nightclothes, another long tunic that weighs a ton, still itches your shoulder. The fabric isn't modern, but it represents your position, a fine irony. The servant passes with a basin of water for your feet to refresh the circulation. He says, you let him soak your toes. The water is cold. You barely feel the difference from the occasional bath and feel the tension of muscles still alive from the hunts and banquets. He also brings a dried fish and something he calls fruit sweets, dried fruits stuck together with a thin honey. It looks like something else, but no one asked. So you eat. While you eat, you think about nobility, about that status that put you at the top, but also placed hundreds of obligations on your bones. The boredom, the itch, the fragrant food that tastes like a lie, the weight of possessions you didn't ask for. It's the insomnia of knowing your people expect you to generate wealth and dispense advice with class. You close your eyes for a second and hear a sound. Someone knocking on the door. It's the steward with a clipboard and a worried look. He enters. He already smells like bad news. He brings an old parchment, torn at the edge. The castle accounts. Nothing adds up. The granary is missing part of the barley. The mill has stopped. A mill. You order them to fix it. He bows and leaves. You run a hand over your forehead. You hardly know this is just the beginning. You look around the room again. The ceiling has a crack. Outside, it rained. In a moment of clarity, you think, the giant castle that costs so much money can't even patch a wall. A shiver. It makes you feel poorer than many people you don't even know. You sleep in light clothes tonight. A secret precaution, because sometimes the sweat itself lulls you to sleep, a cutoff you don't even notice. At least you want to try not to wake up covered in marks from the tight seams. You want to feel the soft pillow. You want silence. You want peace. But the next day comes differently. The bed groans, the clothes itch, the servant enters early. Meals repeat, meetings happen, protocol repeats. And you, tired of all of it, the feudal administration, the arranged marriage, the heavy clothes, the imposed fasts, the banquets that don't feed the soul, you just continue. And in the midst of it all, you realize that being rich in the Middle Ages isn't a privilege, it's a condemnation. It hasn't fully dawned, but the castle is already in an uproar. Hurried steps in the corridors, whispered voices among servants, the creaking of wooden doors that insist on screaming every time someone passes. You are on your feet, though unwillingly, letting yourself be dressed by hands that never ask if you are comfortable. And they don't ask because the answer has never mattered. Today is a day of public ceremony. One of those events that, in theory, celebrate tradition, culture, the continuity of power, but in practice, just serve to let everyone see that you are still alive, well-dressed and sufficiently bored to maintain composure. You put on the ceremonial robes, brocade tunic, embroidered cape, shoes that were not made to walk more than 3 steps. Before leaving the room, the bronze mirror stares back at you with a courage no one else has. Your reflection is warped by the irregular surface, but it's enough to see that you look like a mix between a tired statue and an extra in a bad play. Your hair is styled with lavender oil. The smell is strong, enough to make you slightly nauseous before breakfast. In other words, it started well. You go to the main hall. There the others are gathered, nobles, allies, guests, each one pretending they woke up naturally elegant and energetic. You greet them with the famous subtle chin nod, the kind of greeting that says, I am here against my will, but I have too much of a title to not appear interested. The procession to the chapel begins. It's not far, but the journey feels eternal. There are steps, corridors, more steps, a cold courtyard and stones wet with dew. Your shoe has already slipped twice. You pretend it was a calculated step. After all, losing your posture would be a scandal. Falling on the ground. Well, that would be practically a diplomatic rupture with nobility itself. The ceremony is long. As always, someone sings. The bishop speaks. A servant plays an instrument that clearly was not born for music. You sit on a decorated wooden bench. Decorated, yes, but hard as divine punishment. With every minute, your tailbone screams in 5 dead languages. And while everyone pretends to pay attention to the cleric's words, what's really happening is a silent social ballet. One person observes another's cloak, notices if the ring is new, if the stitching is intact, if the hairstyle is worthy. It's a fashion show, except no one can applaud, smile too much, or show enthusiasm. The sophistication of the medieval elite requires you to always be somewhat unhappy, but beautifully unhappy. After the Mass comes the time for the collective meal, a banquet again. The food is elaborate but predictable. A piece of meat covered in a sauce that was probably once wine, honey, and mustard. But now it's a sweet goo that drips without dignity. You cut it with your personal knife. As always, the bread serves as a plate. As always, the wine is strong. As always, and your appetite is dormant. You watch the others, A noble lady tries to hide the fact that her necklace is hurting her neck. An older baron discreetly wipes his nose on his sleeve. A young man feigns interest in politics, but is clearly counting how many pieces of fruit he can fit in his mouth at once. It's the grand elite, gathered in a festival of fragile appearances and well-dressed discomforts. The conversation turns to the new treaty with a neighboring county. Words like vassalage, jurisdiction, and tribute fly across the hall with the lightness of a brick. You participate because you must, not because you want to. And when you finally get a break, you escape to the courtyard. Outside, the air is damp, but it's still better than the smell of the hall. You breathe in, feel the taste of moss in the air, and think again of your bed. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's the only place where for a few minutes you don't have to perform. But before returning to your room, you must appear in the gardens. It's on the schedule. A public stroll among the poorly kept flower beds, alongside other nobles who hold flowers with the delicacy of someone who has never had to care for a living plant. You walk, listen to forced compliments, pretend to know something about aromatic herbs, and pose for a portrait, which of course will take weeks to be painted, but the artist insists on observing you as if you were the Holy Grail. Upon returning to the castle, the servant is already waiting with another outfit. The afternoon one, less formal but still structured. He helps you change. Meanwhile, he informs you that new letters have arrived. The wedding is being organized. The dowry has been agreed upon. The bride will arrive in weeks. You listen in silence. Then you look out the window. The sky is overcast. A few birds circle the castle, and for a moment you deeply envy a pigeon. It flies, you parade. It chooses its path, you follow the schedule. It eats what it finds, you eat what they serve. And they still say the nobility is the lucky one. You return to your room at the end of the afternoon with one fixed thought: rest. Not to sleep deeply, of course. That would be too bold. Just to lie down for a bit. To breathe without witnesses, to be 5 minutes without needing to meet expectations, without an arched back, without a half smile, without anyone asking about wheat, alliances, or the bishop's mood. The servant follows you in, asks if you'll be changing for dinner. You pretend not to hear. He insists. You say yes, but later. He leaves with a nod that mixes reverence and judgment. You are there, alone. The room is silent. Just the sound of your own footsteps on the stone floor. The light coming through the window is golden, soft, almost beautiful. For the first time all day, you feel time slow down. There's no one waiting for you, no immediate commitment, just the echo of your own exhaustion. You sit on the edge of the bed. The feather mattress groans. The ceremonial clothes still weigh on your body. You loosen the belt, roll your shoulders, and breathe deep. It's in this moment, this almost sacred pause, that you hear a sound from the hallway. A light knock on the door, 3 raps, and the steward's voice. "My lord, unexpected visitors have arrived." Of course, because why not? You put on the cleanest tunic in sight, run a hand through your already slightly oily hair, and walk to the anteroom where the newcomers wait. 2 nobles from a neighboring county. One has the face of someone who's never digested anything properly. The other has the expression of someone who adores politics and gossip. They smile. You return it. They invite you for tea. You accept. And there goes another moment of rest, turned into another disguised audience. The tea is served in the inner garden. The leaves are wilted, but the servants make a point of pretending everything is new, fresh, hand-selected. The visitors praise the aroma. You smile with your lips, but your eyes remain in rest mode. The conversation revolves around trade alliances, exchange of supplies, a possible territorial concession, all with sweet words and slow gestures. You listen, participate, agree with some things, pretend to consider others. This is the game, and you play it well, even when exhausted. An hour later, they leave. They leave promises in the air and diplomatic crumbs on the table. You return to your room like someone returning from battle. Body aching, mind clogged. Your stomach, we forgot the stomach. Yes, dinner is already being prepared, and you need to be present. After all, your absence is noted. It's always commented on. They assign meanings, assumptions, rumors. To be noble is to live as if every step were an official press release. You change again. The evening tunic is darker, embroidered, warmer. The cape has silver details. The shoes are the least uncomfortable, which means they only pinch moderately. In the hall, the candles are lit, the table is ready, the food displayed. Tonight there's a roast, something between lamb and a bird. The smell is good, but you know the seasoning will be more promising than the flavor. The guests enter. Dinner begins, and with it, the social performance restarts. You sit, greet, serve yourself with the elegance of someone who trained for years to make this look natural. You chew slowly, smile moderately, drink with control. The conversations repeat. Different subjects, same patterns. Someone comments on a plague that hit a distant village. Another talks about cattle theft. Someone mentions witchcraft. Always with an air of controlled dread and a certain hidden enthusiasm. After all, fear is also entertaining. You listen to it all, react with false interest, participate, but with your mind elsewhere. You remember the bed, the window, the time that runs on and doesn't belong to you. You think that maybe if you'd been born a commoner, at least you'd have the freedom to be silent without seeming rude. The dinner ends. The guests rise. More greetings, more salutations. You return to the room as if finishing a shift. You take off the clothes with the servant's help, put on the long rustic linen nightshirt, get into bed, lie on your side. Try to find a position where the pillow isn't forming a medieval lump in your neck. And then you close your eyes. You wait for sleep to come. But sleep, like the servants, also has its own schedule, and tonight it decided to be late. You lie there, thinking about everything you did that you didn't want to do, and what you'll have to repeat tomorrow. With different clothes, different food, same obligations, same pose, nobility. The grand theatre where everyone is acting and no one truly rests. Waking up is never sweet, but today it seems even less so. The servant enters slowly and places the basin of water on the floor. You sit up carefully. The candle has already gone out. The room is half dark, and you feel the cold crack the bones in your ankle. The exhaustion is so deep that even the small plaques on the wall paintings seem to weigh on you. You wash your face. The water is colder than yesterday. The towel scrapes your lip, itches. You splash more water on your neck in an instinctive gesture and realize this washing routine doesn't clean anything. It just cleans your face, but not the weight of being a person who must behave as if they have a purpose, even when they don't. The day's outfit is hanging, a tunic again, a cord to tighten, a brooch that pulls the fabric at the shoulder. You put it on and feel a snap in your fingers, a sensation that everything is too tight for your body and too light for your mind. In the breakfast hall, no one speaks. Everyone sits, drinks the broth, bites the bread, has a small glass of light wine. Etiquette demands silence and haste, but in a polite way. You eat with your knife, read the looks of the others, try to decipher if anyone is as tired as you, but everyone hides it. Nobility demands disguising even pain. Messages arrive. The Duke of the North wants to meet. A messenger is waiting outside. The urgency is in that finely wrapped basket that delivers the paper. Even if you're not really going to read it, you'll use it as a pretext to get dressed again. You enter a corridor lit by torches. The wood groans. The heavy cape envelops you. You are not happy, but you must appear measured. The messenger bows. You force a smile. He says the Duke awaits in the courtyard. You nod, go out, and find yourself in the courtyard, damp with dew. The grey sky, the light wind, the feeling of insignificance mixes with the cold seeping into your unprotected bones. The Duke is there, robust, too tall, and his hair is receding at the front. He talks of trade, war, alliances. You respond, a diplomat rich in words. None of it truly concerns you, but your body is learning to feign dignity with perfection. The conversation continues in a solemn tone, until someone mentions a fight over a portion of land in the name of divine justice. You take a deep breath, smile lightly, and imagine turning around and disappearing. But you can't. Your role is to be there, to participate in the folklore, to absorb the relevance, to seem satisfied even if your stomach is empty and boredom is cutting like a blade. The visitor departs. You remain there, wrapped in the cold wind, thinking about what you ate, or rather what was left over from the previous supper. Your stomach complains, but you know lunch is still far off. It might be soup again, or salted fowl, maybe even half-spoiled. But there will be etiquette. There will be rehearsed little laughs. There will be useless conversation. There will be more perfume to disguise it all. You hear the sound of dogs in the distance, the stables, the echo of a cage closing. You return to the castle, climb wide corridors, open heavy doors, see immaculate carpets that look as if they've never been stepped on in a bad mood. And something in you wonders, who produces this fabric if no one ever steps on it with truth? At the end of the day, you return to your room, more exhausted than satisfied. The day's clothes are removed slowly. You take off the layers with care. Your skin hurts in the tight spots. The servant collects them. You sit on the bed, let the garment fall, put on your nightclothes. The room is silent, dark enough to seem safe, calm enough to deceive you. You lie down. The pillow is rough. The feather necklace is still somehow poking your body. You close your eyes, wait for sleep to come, the boredom, and you mentally give thanks for not having to perform anything tomorrow. Although there will probably be another ceremony, more rumors, and more visits. But for now, for this moment, the silence is yours. You awaken without noticing the time pass. The servant brings the basin of water, always gentle, always cold. Your muscles still complain about the day before, but today there's something new. Your hair seems thinner. You run your hand through it and feel you need to be careful not to pull out strands, lest you appear to have lost the status of youth. Getting dressed again is a mechanical ritual. The day's outfit is impeccable, but it weighs as if it were importing punishments. You sit, inject your arm into the sleeve, feel the fabric catch at your elbow. It's the price of looking strong. In the hall, breakfast is the same theatrical ritual. Table set, brief silence, bites and light wine. You turn your nose up at the soup. A servant whispers that the meat was cut into small cubes because the cook wanted to try something new. You feign appreciation. Inside, your stomach turns over, disapproving of everything. A letter arrives, stamped with a golden crest, inviting you to a war council. Again, the counselor is already waiting for you. He bows, talks about geography, about routes, about cavalry. He doesn't wait for your opinion, but you give it. Saying yes or no confers status. Both maintain the status quo. You leave, go to the courtyard. Horses are tied up. You approach, touch the mane of one. Hypocritically, you feel a flicker of affection. The unicorns of your childhood seemed more real than this horse, domesticated by years of cultivation. Still, you mount. You strike a pose. The wind lifts your eyebrow. The body complains, but you ride on. The cavalry organizes. You lead a small group in a symbolic procession to a small neighboring fiefdom. You don't even go that far. The idea is to look like you're going. A gesture that costs more than it seems. The hilt of your sword scrapes your hip. The helmet slips. The weight of the cloak traps the heat and grinds on your neck. But you maintain dignity. Back at the castle, the afternoon brings a calm. A time of shadows cast by stained glass windows, filtering the sun in dark tones. You walk there, guilt-free. A pause that feels like a miracle. Someone hands you a small briefcase. Inside, documents, seals, contracts, official signatures. You recognize the weight of the title. To rule even without being present. You sign a pinprick of power, tiny as a wax seal, terrible in its effects. At night, music in the hall. A sad lute, a well-rehearsed song. You give a slight smile, a slight yawn. You have to feign on your lips more numbness. Dinner is smaller, less ceremony, more space, more silence. You eat peacefully. The treatment is respectful. You don't notice the sweat on your face. You only notice that you are truly hungry. When you get to your room, you want to sleep. Maybe you'll succeed. Maybe the exhaustion is enough. The bed is cold, but the muscles are already forgetting. The pillow is hard, but the mind is already anesthetized. You close your eyes, you wait, and for a few seconds, nothing demands anything. You wake to the distant noise of guardsmen's coats. They're clearing the hall. The smell of torches still burns your nose. Sleep seems to abandon you slowly. The weight of the previous day reminds you that rest is a privilege, and you have a title, not rest. You sit up, stretch, and feel your shoulders still trapped by the last ceremonial cape. The servant enters and waits for you to be ready. You make a gesture that means come, and he brings the basin. In the breakfast hall, the menu repeats the predictable routine. Thick soup, very hard bread, and pale wine. The silence of the room says more than any conversation. You nurse the food. The flavor is subtle, but here subtle is a luxury. And luxury sometimes is exhausting. Today, there's a visit from regional royalty. Troops marching in the courtyard, silks laden with patterns and banners. You go to the courtyard, feeling the cold wind try to wrap around your new tunic. The page boy stumbles, and inside you, a slight relief rises, knowing that not all perfection is demanded of children. And then comes the princess. With a veil, a white dress, and a terrifyingly pedantic expression. The ceremony is long. The princess curtsies, poses for an improvised portrait, makes a standardized speech. Everything choreographed to perfection. Your body follows the steps. Your mind wanders. Every stumble is avoided. Every gaze is controlled. You wonder, how many of the people in this hall still have a life of their own? After the ceremony, it's time for the banquet with the royalty. Everything repels spontaneity. Jewel-encrusted goblets, perfumed cutlery, dishes that look like works of art. You sit next to the princess. She offers you her hand to kiss. You perform the gesture correctly, but the kiss seems more like an intention of possession than politeness. You chew, follow the diplomatic conversation, listen to stale compliments and feel the weight of the social math that doesn't matter. There it is, the next alliance. A life deciphered in numbers and ancestors. After dinner, you push back from the table. Your body thanks you. Your feet complain. You return disbelieving to your room. You have a small glass of wine before getting into bed. You feel your throat burn slightly with absinthe or something strong to keep in your memory. You lie down, breathe deep and look at the dark ceiling. You know that tomorrow you will live it all again. But for now, a second of silence is welcome. You close your eyes and try to forget everything that lies beyond the fabrics, titles, ceremonies, and that secretly consumes you, the hunger for freedom. The sky was still undecided between blue and lead when the servant knocked lightly on the door as if to warn you, whatever rest you were having is over. The day, of course, had already begun before you opened your eyes, because here even the dawn wakes up early. As the damp cloth passed over your face with forced gentleness, you thought about what was to come, and you knew it wasn't a little. The castle's calendar was full, visits from the clergy, collection of taxes, inspection of the walls, plus one more meeting with that group of nobles who confuse military strategy with market gossip. Today's tunic had sleeves that were too long and embroidery of questionable taste, but it was a gift, so you wore it. Nobility is this, pretending that discomfort is part of the charm. The brooch on your chest barely balanced, and the shoe, of course, had been made by an artisan who hated feet. In the main hall, breakfast awaited you, lukewarm and predictable. The bread seemed to have been baked yesterday, but forgotten for days. The wine was the same, diluted to the point of being confused with pessimistic water. The porridge. You stopped trying to guess what it was made of. The only living thing in there was the dust dancing in the shafts of light. After the meal, you crossed the corridors with the posture they expected of you, shoulders back, slow pace, a gaze that feigned interest in whatever was ahead. The problem was that there wasn't always something ahead. Sometimes just more stone, more cold, more waiting. The council was assembled. The agenda, again, was about reinforcing the guard on the southern border. You feigned surprise. They feigned novelty. The scribe noted your every nod as if it were a poem. But it was just you, agreeing out of inertia. One of the older nobles suggested raising the tax on salt. Another retorted talking about revolts. You remained motionless, like a statue of tired flesh. Deep down, you just wanted everyone to decide quickly and leave. But as always, the meeting lasted longer than it needed to and produced less than it promised. With the council over, you escaped to the solar, that forgotten little room with crooked cushions and the smell of damp wood. It was one of the few places where the silence seemed real. You sat in a high-backed chair, let your body sink, and stayed there, looking out the window at a tree that wasn't even yours, but seemed to understand you. The sun, filtered by the clouds, created geometric shadows on the floor. Everything there was static, even time. You closed your eyes. Maybe you dozed for a second, or maybe you just pretended to. Because even in rest, there was guilt. The luxury of doing nothing was always being watched. The sound of hurried footsteps in the corridor interrupted the peace. It was the page announcing the arrival of an emissary, a man with anxious eyes and a dusty tunic. He brought news of a local conflict involving lands disputed by two barons who swear loyalty to you, but can't seem to swear peace between themselves. You heard him out, responded with a half-dozen solemn words, delegated the response to the scribe, and sent for one of the counselors. Peace, it seems, doesn't survive even in the shadows. Lunch came late. Dry lamb, overcooked cabbage, and a puree that resembled sand with herbs. But you ate with an almost cynical calm. Not out of hunger, but because it was one of the few tasks that required little thought. In the afternoon, a small delegation arrived from the neighboring village. They brought gifts, pots of honey, dyed cloths, a fat chicken. You thanked them, gave them coins, exchanged promises. They smiled. You smiled. But only one of those smiles was real, and it wasn't yours. When you finally returned to your room, the sun was already setting. The bed was waiting, but it wasn't calling to you. The mattress seemed firmer than the floor, the pillows cold, and the bolster tilted in a way that would only make sense if your head were cubic. You took off the tunic with relief, pulled on the thick socks, sat on the edge of the bed, and breathed. And for an instant there was no war, there was no protocol, there was no dispute over salt, just the sound of the wood groaning under the weight of a body that just wanted to sleep without having to police its own dreams. You closed your eyes. Maybe you would sleep, maybe you would just be absent, but in that instant at least no one was demanding you be more noble than human. The night descended on the castle without any hurry. Without electric lights, it's just heavy darkness and stifled breathing. You sit on the bench in your room, lean your body over, and let the shadow's embrace occupy your tired shoulders. You hope the silence will finally be yours. But the one knocking on the door at 10 at night is the steward. His face is a bit dirty, his gaze tense. He talks about rumors. The harvest was spoiled. There's a sign of plague in the granary. They say someone cursed the lord who was supervising the harvest. A case of witchcraft. Again, you run a hand through your hair with weary impatience. The steward waits for an official position. You nod mechanically. You will attend to it. Expose the rule. Order an exorcism. Promise an investigation. The steward bows and leaves. The castle needs to resume formalities that you reject with your entire body. After he leaves, you drag yourself to the window. You look out at the silent courtyard. The torches flicker. A few men circulate, spears crossed. Just vigilance, just faith and fear. You want to believe it's an act, but the dread is real. People swear they see a dark figure at night. The urge to run, the urge to swear innocence, until they realize guilt weighs heavier on the heart than in the words. You close the window, lie down. You know that tomorrow someone will have to explain the existence of the curse. Someone will use your official voice to feign control. And you, once again, will smile and say the politically correct thing. Try to sleep. The mattress groans. The wind carries the howl of a frightened animal. You close your eyes tightly. Not to fall asleep, but to not hear. And maybe, for a few microscopic minutes, you feel less noble and more human. It hasn't fully dawned, but the servants are already moving through the corridors. Light steps, low voices. You hear the silent rehearsal of a day that barely had any rest and already demands presence. Getting up hurts more today. Every muscle seems to narrate the report of the night before. Cold feet, tense shoulders, a mind hitting the limits of its patience. The basin of water appears in the middle of the room, a trivial invitation to a ritual that doesn't wash away the exhaustion. You dress in the heaviest garment you can remember. Dark brocades, metal buttons, cords, everything ready to look impeccable, even when everything hurts. Layer upon layer of adornment that traps the air and suffocates you with elegance. Breakfast is served. The atmosphere is tense. Everyone feigns normality while knowing a witchcraft accusation was made. Rehearsed lines. The barren land will be restored. It sounds like a bitter joke. You chew slowly. The bread scratches your throat. The broth drips on your cheek, and even so you wipe the edge of the plate with the corner of your tunic. Etiquette still demands control. Today, there is a spiritual visit. The bishop, again. He comes to drone on about the fief's boundaries, penitence, prayer. You listen, your mind drifts. The echo of his words dances in the chapel arches. You close your eyes for a second, but you already feel the world pointing. The ignorant sleep at inappropriate hours. You breathe, maintain composure. You want to go back to bed, but it doesn't happen. Life demands to be seen. You appear in the halls, certify honor and discipline, communicate aid to the people, listen to promises about emergency help, all in a formal, upbeat tone. News arrives that an urgent meeting will be held about the supposed plague, again, and still under suspicion. Something you didn't want, but now you have to sign off on. On your way out, you breathe by the solar window. The day is overcast. The air is cold. The entire fiefdom seems trapped in a limbo of fear. You think about what it would be like if you could choose another destiny. A land without rituals, without the expectation of appearing perfect. But here you are. Soon, lunch appears. Guardians gather. Senses are tested. Signs of life must appear. Social forces, laws, fear. Dominated by the right outfit. You eat again with diplomatic calm. You soak the bread in the broth. Chew slowly. Pretend to believe in God. Pretend to believe in yourself. In the afternoon, the vigil, minor entities talk of signs, of dry harvests, of charms to ward off the evil eye. You listen with measured interest, a mix of contained curiosity and visceral fatigue, but you participate with the composure of those who believe in any invisible force, as long as it confirms the authority of the powerful. When the sun goes down, only the house remains. The wind lifts the folds in the courtyard. The torches are lit in a line. The castle shrinks. Silence reappears. The servants' footsteps are already fading one after another, leaving the echo as the only companion. You go up slowly, take off the tight shoes, sit on the bed. The clothes weigh you down. You undo the buttons slowly, making each movement count. A rhythm. The body finally relaxes. The servant says he's not bringing soup anymore, just a glass of mild wine. You drink. The liquid is bitter, but it helps. You lie down, and your mind slips. Maybe today you'll sleep early, or maybe you'll stay awake, inventorying the weight of the protocols. But for now, the silence keeps you company. The exhaustion is so great, it almost feels like medicine. You close your eyes and fall asleep to the distant sound of your own hesitation. You've already lost count of how many identical days you've lived. But today is different, at least in appearance. The castle is more restless than usual. Pages running, maids arguing over fabrics. Banners being hung as if the stone walls cared about decoration. It's a day of celebration. You didn't choose to celebrate anything, but they said it's the anniversary of some ancestral treaty that guaranteed peace between you and some other noble who is already dead. So, as tradition demands, you must smile, toast, and look absolutely delighted with existence. Today's bath is an event in itself. The wooden tub was brought in advance, steaming slightly. Warm water, aromatic herbs, and a spoonful of honey. Not in the water, of course, in your mouth. A treat that solves nothing but serves as a courtesy. While you relax, or try to, you hear the sound of decorations being tied up outside, ropes being stretched, banners fluttering in the wind, lute music in pre-rehearsal, out of tune as always. Someone is rehearsing a speech in broken Latin. When it's time to get dressed, the ceremonial garb is already waiting. It weighs more than the responsibility of being pleasant. Layers upon layers of cloth, leather, embroidery, and of course the crown, not the metal one, but the more discreet one with sewn-on pearls, which must be visible at all times. A pompous description, a paradox that only nobility knows how to feign. In the hall, the guests are already starting to gather. They all smell of strong perfume, cheap wine, and pretense. The greetings are long, the conversations shallow. You hear stories about hunts that never happened, deals that never existed, and military feats that were, in reality, just discreet falls from a horse. The banquet is served with pomp. The table is a visual festival of everything that can cause a stomachache in 3 hours. Undercooked game meat, overly salted fish, sweet pies with excessive spices. You chew with political slowness, praise the flavor with forced sobriety, and ignore the pre-scheduled cramps. In the middle of the meal, the music starts. A group of instruments tries to find the right key. They fail, but no one cares. The dancing begins. The women twirl in heavy dresses. The men hop as if jumping over doubts. You watch. You smile when you're observed. And you hope no one asks you to the floor. Of course they ask. You get up, take the hand of some lady whose name you don't remember, and spin twice with steps memorized from other parties, from other years, from other obligations. Everything is so rehearsed that even your discomfort seems part of the show. The hours stretch on like the Countess's gown, long, dragging, decorative. You sit down again, ask for wine. Someone talks about politics, another about poetry. A third asks if the fiefdom has good roads. You pretend to be fascinated by every word. Inside, you're choosing which wall of your mind you're going to bang your head against, imaginatively. When the party starts to die down, the guests begin to leave. Always slowly. One must maintain the pose until the very last step. You wave, thank them, promise future visits you will never make. And when the hall empties, all that's left is silence and your body begging for mercy. You return to your room with the feeling that every muscle wants to retire. You take off the tunic, undo the knots, rip off the shoes like someone freeing prisoners, sit on the edge of the bed and breathe deeply. The night outside still echoes the last steps of the servants extinguishing the torches. You lie down, look at the ceiling. Your head is still spinning. The fault of the wine, or the dancing, or the constant need to pretend that any of this makes sense. But now, no one demands anything more, at least until dawn. The silent dawn invades the castle like an old enemy that finally found a gap in the door. You walk carefully down the corridor. You know that any bell out of place will announce your presence out of bed. The creak of wood under your feet weighs more than anything that happened during the party. You reach your room without alarm. The servant has already brought a basin of water for your feet. You push back the blanket, sit, and dip your heels. The cold water seems to awaken some part of your body that is still trying to forget the burden of the day's honors. You close your eyes for a second, hiding your gaze in the profound silence. Your body is still reeling. Even returning to bed, your reflection in the bronze mirror looks more tired. A subtle line of tension at the corner of your mouth. Eyes that have seen more commitments than they should have. You breathe deep, pull the blanket up to your chest, lie down, make that one last sigh. Not of relief, but of resignation. And then you hear a faint sound of a door closing far away. A whisper of footsteps moving away. The distant echo comforts you, because the presence of others was too intense for too many hours. Now, all that's left is the silence and the wait for a new day. One in which you will be watched again, demanded of again, held accountable again. You feel the cold sheets, the bed that groans under the weight of its own expectation, the pillow that insists on turning into a hard wooden plank. You close your eyes, and maybe, just maybe, you sleep. The night was long, or maybe too short to count. You don't know if you slept, dozed, or just hid under the sheets trying to silence your thoughts. The bed was more uncomfortable than usual, but still uncomfortable enough to remind you that rest, for you, isn't a right. It's an interval between demands. Outside, the sky lightens slowly. The light invades the room like an unwanted guest. The servant enters without ceremony, and the routine pulls you back in like a velvet leash. Beautiful but tight, you get up without rushing, not out of luxury, but because every joint seems to be dragging itself. Your knees pop, your neck protests, the water in the basin is too cold. You wash your face with the vigor of someone simulating life. You don't feel refreshed. You feel submissive. Today's clothes, more of the same. Heavy fabrics, sober colors, embroidered crests. You wear the symbols of your own prison with the naturalness of someone who has already forgotten what it was like to walk lightly. Everything is a ritual. Even the way you adjust the belt buckle carries a symbolic weight. And breakfast waits for you at the same table as every other day. Bread, broth, silence. The food is functional, appetite, a vague memory of less demanding times. Around you, eyes watch. Servants awaiting orders, servers, pretending to have freedom. The day is for reviewing documents. A monk, a copyist, has been summoned to present the fiscal records from the last semester. You receive him in the small room in the south tower, where the light enters at a sharp angle, casting long shadows that look like arms trying to escape the wall. The monk speaks slowly. He articulates every word as if dictating a spell. You hear half of it. The other half escapes between the sighs you no longer have the patience to disguise. He mentions unpaid tithes, adjusted taxes, disputed lands. You respond with nods. Do you remember when you found this interesting? Today you just count the minutes until he leaves. When the session ends, the fiefdom continues. Children shout in the courtyard. Dogs run between carriages. The smell of burning wood rises from the refectory. You go down a few steps just to feign presence. You speak with two servants, listen to promises of repairs. You smile sideways. None of these conversations change the course of your life, but they maintain the image of an involved noble. At lunch, more elaborate dishes, as if the castle were trying to compensate for the monotony with an excess of spices. You feign pleasure as you chew. Your teeth hurt, your stomach complains, but the role demands contained enthusiasm. You give a compliment. The cook smiles, and you go back to chewing without appetite. The afternoon holds an inspection of the outer areas. You pull on boots, cape, tie back your hair, go out under the weak sun, which seems more like decoration than light. You walk through the fields, speak with the administrator, listen about predicted harvests, problematic rats, and a well that needs to be reopened. You promise everything and write down nothing. Back at the castle, your body begs for rest, but the afternoon ceremony demands clean clothes, an upright posture, and another round of diplomatic smiles. Some travelers from other fiefdoms have arrived to discuss alliances. You receive them in the central hall. Stories are heard. Board games that no one likes are played. Wines that no one appreciates are served. You feel your mind float in the middle of sentences about inheritances, hunts, and matrimonial arrangements. In the midst of it all, someone suggests you should visit the neighboring fiefdom next month. You feign enthusiasm. You already know you won't go, but you also know the lie is more polite than the refusal. At night, the castle shrinks. The voices diminish. The corridors grow cold. You return to your room. You undress slowly, as if each layer of fabric takes away a piece of responsibility. The clothes fall to the floor, as if they've fainted before you. You lie down. The candle still burns nearby. The room smells of smoke and exhaustion. You close your eyes, but you don't sleep. Your head spins with images from the day, accounts to be settled, faces to please. You turn your body, adjust the pillow. One sigh, another. Maybe sleep will come, maybe just momentary forgetfulness. But either way, the night seems less cruel than the day. And in that, you allow yourself to be silent. The candle you left lit went out on its own in the middle of the night. You realize this when you open your eyes in the absolute dark, where everything seems to move, just because you can't see it. The wood in the ceiling pops lightly. The curtain rustles with the wind. And the silence doesn't comfort you. It just amplifies the sound of your own breathing. You don't get up, but you don't sleep either. You just exist there, motionless, with the weight of the night on your chest. You think about tomorrow's commitments, the ones you'll remember and the ones you'll forget on purpose. What are a few debts in the face of eternity? Time drips by. The pre-dawn hours drag on like a procession of shadows. Outside, the guards are talking quietly. One of them coughs. You hear the sound of a dog barking in the distance. Nothing urgent, but everything stops you from completely relaxing. When it finally starts to get light, you sit up in bed. The servant enters without waiting to be called. He knows you by now. He understands that your hours aren't exactly predictable, but the demands of your title are. He brings water, bread, a jug of diluted wine. All of it measuredly, blandly. You eat slowly, watching the light enter the window, filtered by the dust accumulated on the stained glass. The beauty is there, hidden behind small cracks, like almost everything in this castle. Today, you decide not to go down immediately. You stay seated on the edge of the bed, staring at the opposite wall as if it's going to tell you something new. It won't, but it's the kind of hope that repeats itself out of habit. Hours later, you appear in the smaller hall. The servants hide their surprise. You're late, after all, but no one dares comment. They just slide the day's tasks forward as if everything were still on schedule. And you pretend it is. The morning meeting is about construction. A new, higher wall to guarantee defense against attacks that no one knows if will ever come. You approve it, because it's what's expected, and because denying it would only bring more meetings. The castle engineer talks about stone, time, budget. You listen to half of it. The rest gets lost in the echoes of the hall. You rest your chin on your hand, not looking bored, but deeply, profoundly bored. The afternoon passes. Between more documents, an unwanted visit from a distant cousin who talks like he's a poet, but writes like a butcher, and the news that a servant ran off with a mule and 2 silver spoons. You feign indignation, but deep down, you almost envy the audacity. Dinner is served without a party, a vegetable stew, tough meat, and a wine that tastes more like punishment. You eat, unsurprised. And you talk with the day's guests with phrases that could have been said yesterday or in any century. At the end of the night, the servant helps you undress. The clothes slide off your shoulders, heavy as the day they carried. The room is cold. The lit candle projects strange shadows on the walls, and the bed, though welcoming, promises nothing more than a few more hours of suspension. You lie down, close your eyes, and as always, wait for the exhaustion to win before your mind does. The dawn arrived gently, but you didn't notice it. In the few moments between dozing, you felt the weight of the routine demanding your presence. Now, a faint light enters, turning the furniture into adversarial silhouettes. You hesitate to get up, but duty calls you in the form of soft footsteps in the corridor. The servant appears, brings bread, watery broth, and another glass of light wine. The standard breakfast that has more of a psychological effect than a nutritional one. He waits patiently while you chew without hurry. Around you, the echo of silence dominates again. Signs of life remain in constant motion while you observe through your own tired eyes. Today is inspection day in the east of the fiefdom. You get dressed. The tunic holds the sun but pinches your shoulders. The cape makes noise along the silent corridors. There is something ritualistic in moving all this fabric just to go out and breathe a little air, which will inevitably return to the hall, loaded with expectations. The courtyard is damp. The gardens are already blurred. The fog transforms the statues into phantom guardians. You pass between bushes twisted like ancient oaths until you reach the border marked by stakes and wooden fences. The administrator points out problems. Broken fences, ditches that need maintenance. You listen, you agree with what you understand and order remedies. Once again, your wait takes the form of a symbolic decision. Back at the castle, lunch awaits. This time, rice with herbs and stewed meat. The texture is soft, unexpectedly comforting, although etiquette makes you appear to savor the menu as if it were a revelation. The other nobles feign surprise. You just chew. You don't disapprove, but you also don't believe in anything you eat. The afternoon holds smaller visits. Artisans, merchants, anonymous letters delivered with timidity. You respond with contained politeness, listen to requests. The weariness of your subjects surfaces in their speech. Power is this, listening to rumors and pretending that the voice of a title always has an answer. Dinner promises to be light. Head soup, they say. You arrive at the hall. A group of councillors observes the trays near the fireplace. They talk about adjusting taxes, stories of plenty, and promises of kindness. You nod your head, try to follow, but sleep threatens to take over. When you finally return to your room, you are exhausted from so many formalities. The final victim was not your body, but your will. The servant closes the window, puts out the candle, and withdraws with the solemnity of someone performing a ritual. You wait a few minutes in the dark, listen to the sounds of the castle sleeping. Creaks, pops, silence. You pull the sheet up to your chin and decide not to try to think. You close your eyes. The night arrived without alarm. No one took off the crown you didn't wear. No one erased your insignia. Silence dominated the castle, but you are still awake, as if you changed the channel in the middle of the official program. The room darkens slowly. Even the beam of moonlight is weak, almost shy. The pillow seems lighter than it was yesterday, probably because your body is already failing to care about it. You lie down, close your eyes, wait for a serene sleep. But the silence returns, helping you hear your thoughts with a clarity that only exists when no one else is speaking. Sighs, breathing between the sheets. The world remains immobile just for a few seconds. Then comes the sound. Hurried steps in the corridor, a whisper of wind, the groan of doors moving. Something pulls you from the ambition of not thinking, rips the blanket. A flash of light crosses the window. The world outside has woken up without asking permission. You turn over. Your body wants to complain, but you repress it. Every gram of rational energy in this moment has to hide. The forced wool collar tightens your chest. The pillow pushes you away. The night is already over, and it's time for another daily performance. to put on the invisible armor of dignity. You sigh deeply, close your eyes again, and expect less than you always expect, because rest is a fragile desire, and you have already woken up 1,000 times without completing the journey. The day was born grey, without shine. The servant was already watching you from the crack in the door. He explained with a careful voice, it was time to get up. You stretched with the weight of an entire century and felt your bones conversing among themselves, without any convincing alliance. Getting dressed was a repeated exercise. Today, the brooch pinched more. The button on the sleeve danced as if complaining about your presence, and you thought, why do I adapt so much? But you adapted, again, as always. Table set, bread, broth, weak wine. The echo of the scraping chairs sounds like a rooster crowing too early. The flavor dawns without surprise. You chew out of habit, and only for that. Today there are royal visits, again. Judges, messengers, nobles from the north, from the south, all exchanging greetings and secrets hidden behind diplomacy. You watch, intervene when necessary, smile carefully, only on the outside. The visit discusses taxes, soldiers, and a possible alliance, again subject to approval. You pronounce a few keywords: loyalty, growth, heritage. You seem to shine in public discourse, but inside you are empty, exhausted, a hostage to someone who still believes that power is wielded with polished words. Lunch is light, less pomp, a visual truce. You eat in peace, or at least pretending to. Your heart is slower. Your brain is already planning the budget for the insomnia that will come later. The end of the day approaches. The anniversary party for the treaty is already a memory. The music silenced hours ago. The castle sleeps. Again, you go up, pull the pillow to the right side. Again, breathe, close your eyes, and make the last effort of the day, allowing yourself to rest. Good night, tired listener, and until the next one, sleep with a tired story.